This is Gemara Nedarim Daf Yomi Dalid, all the learning for today's shir, which is for Yudalid Cheshvan. Incredibly, is Ischos Ilan Neshama for Moshe ben Rochaim Alevi Bernstein, sponsored by his son, a very close friend and longtime Daf member, and therefore we like to dedicate today's shir, and he is sponsoring today's shir as a schos for his father. And the learning of the entire Chabura Baruch Hashem, every word, Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam, daf by daf, should bring Rav Moshe Rav Chaim Alevi to an higher and blazing Gan Eden Shel Maila, closer and closer to the Kisei HaKavod, be a Melech for his son, for his entire family, and the entire Chabura, Be'ezras Hashem. We pick it up from the bottom of Yugimel Amid Beis. Yesterday we began the second parak of Nedarim, and we began learning the flip side, as really the Ran so eloquently puts it, that since in the first parak we're discussing that which is aser, so in the second parak we discuss that which is mutter. What does it mean, that which is mutter? It means Nedarim that are not going to work. And as we started yesterday in the Mishnah, there were two parts in the Mishnah. Part A of the Mishnah was Ilu Mutar and Chulin, Kipsar Chazir, etc. And part B of the Mishnah were the entities in which the neder doesn't work, but you need to be paiseach, you need to be shoyel on the neder. And that was the case in which one said that his wife should be like her mother. So let's begin. Says the Gemara, Taima de'amar chulin sha'oicha lecha. The first part of today's discussion should hopefully be a bit familiar, as we had this in the past few days daf, almost identical Gemara. Says the Gemara, the reason why in case A it does not work, and it's not an eder, and he is mutter, is because he says this item, this piece of meat, this entity is chulin. Your food, your items should be like chulin. Ha'amar la chulin, shaykh lecha, which is what says the Gemara, 2 lines from the bottom of Yigimel and Beis. Mashma loy la chulin, as we learned that the la, the lamid, connotes loy. If someone says that, then it seemingly points to loy lechulin have. Elo, rather, if it's not chulin, what is it? Elo carbon. Then it would yes work. So says the Gemara, mani mas nisin. Who is such an opinion in the Mishnah that holds that it's dafka, specifically this case, that does not work? But if he says Allah chulin, then it will yes work, because then he means it should not be chulin and carbon. Says the Gemara, 1 second. Ira meir. It can't be. Why can it not be Rameir? Everyone should understand this already, as this is exactly what the Gemara said. As we learned back 2 days ago, that all Nedarim are learned out from the Tanai b'nei Gad b'nei Ruvain. And therefore, there's a machlokes Rameir and Rav Yehuda, whether you have to explicitly explicate both the positive and the negative of the neder. And Rameir said, yes. Rameir taught us, you do not say that from the negative you infer the positive. In the Mishnah, in the case of la chulin, that's a negative. Loy chulin, it's not chulin. And then we're going to be inferring the positive el carbon, and it's going to work. That's not Rameir. So seemingly el Rav Yehuda. But I asked the Gemara, Hainu Reisha. That's the Reisha. And of course, Reisha is not the Reisha of our Mishnah, as the Ran points out, but rather the Mishnah back in Daf Yomi Beis. So answers the Gemara, you're right. Since in the first part of the Mishnah listed cases that these items should be like the meat of a chazir, like idolatry, and it does not work, chulin. Therefore it also says a case of chulin. What does it mean, So the Ran here speaks out that what's going on, that once it said these cases, lavli gufei, v'lavli diuka, el agav gurara, that once we said case A, we went into case B. Excuse me, that round is really going in the next Gemara, but it's the same answer. Ravina Amar, teretz number 2 in the Gemara, And Chavrusa pointed out something interesting, is that in case A, it doesn't tell us who answer A is from. Answer B is Ravina. So often when the Gemara will not tell us who the answer is, we would assume it's whom? It's the Gemara talking. Who's the Gemara? The Gemara is Ravina and Rav Ashi. But if Ravina is teres number 2, then who's teres number 1? Interesting ha'ara. Nice point to think about. But says the Gemara teres number 2, Ravina Amar, Hachi Katani. Ve'elu mutarin ki'achulin. This is the way to read the Mishnah. And these items are mutter like chulin, kibisar chazir, kavoidas kochavim, and it's more of just an introduction to the Mishnah. Ask the Gemara on Ravina Aviloi Tana chulin. If it didn't say that it's going to be like chulin, then what? Hava Amina, I would have thought ba'i she'ila. I would have thought that what's the introduction that it's like chulin? Showing us that if not, it would need she'ila. You need to go and be shoyel on the neder. But I asked the Gemara, is that really your thought process? Would there be a hava amina that you have to be shoyel on such a neder? Can't be. Why not? Everyone knows already. What did the Seifa, what the end of the Mishnah tell us? 10 lines down, Yudalam and Aleph. The end of the Mishnah taught us that if one says you're like to me like your mother, then specifically in that case, what does that infer? The Reisha, lo ba'i sheila. That infers that the Reisha does not need sheila. So what would your hava mina be? Why would you have to introduce the Reisha telling me it's case of chulin? Ela machvarta chulin memela nazva. Says the Gemara, you're right. What is it must be? It must be the case of chulin. It just brought by in passing. I got Gerara just brought by, as you mentioned, the end of the other case in the Mishnah. Before we continue, part A of today's shir says the Gemara, Mina Hani Mili. And as the Ran spills in the details, Mina Hani Mili Mimavis Davar Aser Loi Mitzar. Where do we know the whole preface, the whole tenet of our Mishnah? That Atfasa saying A is like B does not work with a davar aser, has to be a davar nader. Amar Kra says in the Torah, Ish ki yidar neder lashem, ad sheyidar b'davar anader. So from the pasuk we learn out that has to be something a davar anader. Ask the Gemara, Yachi afilu davar aser nami. If that is true, then go look at the end of the pasuk that says, Daksiv lasar iser al nashoy. So if you're learning it out for the pasuk, then the end of the pasuk should teach us lesser Yisrael nafshoy, that you could make a neder being matfis equating A like V like a davar aser. Answers the Gemara, lesser iser mi baile. No, the end of the pasuk is teaching us an additional chiddush. Tanya is learned to the Brayse Zeu Iser Amar B'Tayra, as we learn back in your Beis Amid Aleph, the specific and the unique chiddush as the Ran over here so eloquently fills in the missing details for us. Says the Ran that even though the neder is specific to he himself, it's not a kloliistic neder. And that was going back in your Beis, in which one makes a neder that he won't eat like the day his father was nifter. So even though it's specific to one person, it's still going to work. And that was the chiddush of that end of the pasuk, says the Ran, quoting the Gemara prior. And now we call to part B of the Mishnah. If someone says to his wife, you are to me like your mother, what's the halacha? The halacha is he has to be poischin al neder, he has to be shoylin al neder, that we don't want it to be lightheaded, said the Mishnah, and therefore we allow him and tell him to be poiseach and shoyel on the neder. Asks the Gemara, 8 lines to the end of Yudalid Aman Aleph. Viraminu, I'll ask you a contradiction. Hariyat alai kibesar ima. If someone says, you are like me, like the flesh of mother. Kibesar achoti, like the flesh of my sister. Ka'arla, like Arla klaya. Karen loy omar klum. Says the Brisa, you said nothing. What's the kasha? Here you see, you don't have to be shayl. You do not have to be go to Talmud Chacham to ask about the neder. Automatically, it's null and void. So why in our case are we saying you just have to be shayl? Amar Abaya, you know what it means Lo yamar klum midaraisa. But our whole din in the Mishnah is a din on the derabanan level. You're right. On the deraisa level, you said is lo yamar klum. But on the derabanan level, you're going to, have to be shayil. Teretz number 1 of Abaya. Rava Amar. Teretz number 2. Ha b'talmidei chachamim. The brisa that says lo yamar klum, and you do not even have to be shayil, is talking about talmidei chachamim. Ha b'amaretz. Whereas the Mishnah by us that says you have to be shayil, is talking about an amaretz. Ve'ha tanya. And as one can anticipate, and as the Ran 2 lines to the bottom speaks out, this V'atani is bini chusa. It's a raya, says the Gemara, quoting a brisa, a raya to this differentiation of Rava between Talmud Chacham and Amaretz. Ha'noider ba'Torah, lo yamar klum. So it makes a neder by the Torah, it's nothing. V'amar Rav Yechon, what does that mean? V'tzarech sheila chacham. And you need to, be shayel with a Talmud Chacham. V'amar Rav Nachman, what scenario do you have to be shayel? V'Talmud Chacham eino tzarech sheila. So in this case, in a case of someone making a neder by a Torah, in that scenario, we see that Rav Nachman differentiates that if the person who made such a neder is a Talmud Chacham, then he does not need sheila. But if the person that made the neder is not a Talmud Chacham, then he needs sheila. And now we turn over to Yudalit Amid Beis, and now the Gemara continues. Tanya, we learned in a brisa, and this brisa is going to add on a bit more clarity to that which we just said. This differentiation between Talmud Chacham and not with regard to this neder about a Torah. What exactly does that mean? Tanya, we learned in a brisa. Ha'noider ba'Torah, so makes a neder by the Torah. Loi omar klum. But if someone says, I'm making a neder with that which is written in the Torah, then Devarim Kayam, it works. Devarim Kayam. But let's say someone makes a neder ba ubi meshekasiba. He says both. He's making a neder by the Torah and also by that which is written in it. Then Devarim Kayam, then it works. I asked the Gemara, I don't understand. That was repetitive. Katani ba meshekasiba. First, the Brisa said that which is written into it. Dvarim Kayam, it works. So, bo b'meshekasiba sarich l'meimar. What are you adding on in that case, in the second case? So, Amar Rav Nachman loy kasha ha demachta oiraisa ara. One case is referring to where the Torah is lying on the ground. And different Rishonim here speak out. It doesn't mean it's lying literally on the ground. It doesn't mean that it's a bizayon. That's not the detail that we're honing in on over here. Rather, it means that you're not holding it. It's lying on the table. It's lying in the chair. Case number 1. And the other case where you're holding it in your hand. What's this differentiation between I'm holding it versus I'm not holding it? Explains the Gemara. Machtal aro. If the Torah is lying on the ground, which again we just meant it's not in your hands, it's on a chair, on a table, etc. Taite agvile. Then what is your das when you make a neder? It's on the gvil. It's on the parchment. And then only if he adds on and he says ba ubi meshekasiv ba. If he adds on, he says I'm making a neder in the Torah and that which is written in it, then he's coming to make a neder that which is written in it. Again, if the Torah is not in his hands and he says I'm making a neder on the Torah, what's he having in mind? The gevil, the parchment. Therefore, it's not a good neder. Now, only if he adds on ba'uba meshekasaba, he adds on that the neder is not only on the parchment, but also that which is written into it, then it's going to be a good neder. But if he's holding it in his hands, then even when he just says ba, the word ba by itself, I'm holding it. What's ba? Ba on this Torah, then it's going to be a good neder right away. Another way of explaining this brisa, the differentiation is not whether he's holding it on the ground, it's lying on the ground, it's not in his hand. You know the chiddush is, Mahani. The chiddush is, even though you're not holding it, and you said what's written in it, so maybe one would think, what are you referring to? You're referring to the parchment. No, that is the chiddush, that your das, your mindset is that which is written into the Shem Hashem, into the Askarais. Then it's yes, a good neder. And then you're going to ask, so why did the Brisa say the same case twice? It said if you made a neder ba, it's good. It's good. It's the same case. It's just adding on, teaching you that which is even more pashit. Teretz number 3. Kula mitziasa nami denakala biyada. Teretz number 3 is that really in the middle of the case as well, he's holding it in his hand. V'akamashlam, what's the chiddush? Kiven denakala biyadei. Teloya marba command amar b'mashik asabadami. That when you're holding it, even if you don't say ba, it's as if you said it again because it's in your hand. And those are going to be the 3 different ways of explaining this brisa, of explaining this differentiation between the Torah al-Ara and between the Torah al-Ara and the Torah biyadei. And again, the reason why we brought down this brisa, as we just peek back in Yudal Amid Aleph, is to answer up this differentiation between a Talmud Chacham and a non-Talmud Chacham, which really is coming to answer up the contradiction between our Mishnah and the brisa that said when one says Kibesar Ima Loi Omar Klum, which sounds like you do not even have to be shoyel, you don't even have to undo the neder with the Talmud Chacham. And our Mishnah said you do. The difference is whether it's made by a Talmud Chacham or not. Before we call it a day, let's just begin the Mishnah, which will be tomorrow's discussion. Koinam sha'ani yashin. If someone says, Koinam, my sleeping, sha'ani medaber, my speaking, shani mahalech, my walking, ha'omer liisha, or he says to a woman, koinam shani misham sheikh, I make a koinam with regard to having relations with you, harizeh, bal yachal devarai. In all these cases, he's included in bal yachal devarai. There's going to be a neder in all these cases. And we're going to stop over here, as tomorrow we're going to get involved in all these cases. Is this a neder? Is this a shvua? What exactly is it chal on? Is there an item over here or not? And we'll pick it up from here. B'siyata d'shmaya.